really nice to be here today. Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming. I know there's a lot of options. So to start off, I just have a question for you. Who here would say they're a curious person? Raise your hand if you consider yourself curious. Yeah, so looking around, I'd say that's most of us. And one of the things we've been asking at Google is how do you tap into that curiosity? How do you make people more curious and more interested in learning so that learning doesn't feel like this chore or this obligation, but it actually feels like something you want to do? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I come from a long line of inventors. When I grew up, I used to play with Sculpey polymer clay, which was the first clay you could turn into something and then cook in your home oven. And my grandfather invented it. And that same curiosity that Sculpey gives people when they play with it was something that I brought into the classroom when I brought my Cuisinart rods to school as a young kid. And these are like the ancestors to unit blocks. And I would use these to be more creative, but also to have deeper understanding about math, to solve problems and to understand them. And later on in my career, I was really excited to become a toy designer. And I made the shift from using toys to learn to making toys for learning. And Zoob was my first big project. And it was really exciting because construction toys are a way to really learn about patterns in the world and discover them through play. And this idea of discovery and learning and creativity is something that's become a theme in my life and in my career. Sometime late in the 90s, I noticed that more and more kids were going to the toy stores and choosing electronic toys, things that were slightly interactive, but not that creative. And so I went to the MIT Media Lab to think about how could you take art and design and learning theory and bring them together to really change the shape of media and technology. And that's really driven my work at Google and elsewhere to try to figure out, like, how can technology be more useful to us? How can it bring out our voices? One day I got a call from Google to come work on a secret project. A little scary to go work on a job when you don't know what the job is. And so it was kind of exciting to then go get to work on this project called Google Glass, which was an effort to make computing so lightweight it would disappear, just like these glasses I'm wearing. And that was something that brought me into this notion of immersive computing. And I moved to the VR team to think about how do you make computing more tangible and more interactive. But while I was working on that, COVID hit. And I saw my kids struggling to learn from home. And I thought, maybe I could do something to help. And so I joined this young team that was working on making our core products at Google, like Search and Gemini, better for learning overall. And for the last 4.5 years, I've been trying to figure out how do you make Google's products great for curiosity, great for learning and discovery and deeper understanding. And so today I'm going to take you behind the scenes on one of the projects we did. Are you ready? All right. Thank you. So we know that the best learning happens one-on-one, but one-on-one tutoring doesn't scale. And the question we've been asking is how could you bring a tutor to every learner and a TA to every teacher in the world? And what could that do for learning overall? And that's really the vision that's been guiding a lot of our work at Google. And we've been thinking about how do we transition and evolve our products from answers to more engaging explanations, from passive to more interactive learning. And when we talk to students about what they love about the products and what they do for them, we hear that there's different things they really depend on. On Search, they really appreciate accuracy and multimedia and reliable sources. And on Gemini, they love the ability to ask follow-up questions in a really natural way, the way you would talk to a person, and to get creative with it. And so one day we had kind of a light bulb moment, and we thought, what if Search and Gemini had a baby? And we sprinkled in some learning science. What would that be? And this question was kind of following a funny conversation I had with my daughter, Annika. So at the time, she was in a chemistry class. I don't know that much chemistry. She asked me for help with her homework. I didn't really know how to do it. So I said, well, where's your textbook? Let's take a look. And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, what do you mean you don't know? And she said, well, I've never really opened my textbook. I'm like, really? Do you even have one on the computer maybe? She's like, oh yeah, but it's like 7 clicks away. So I don't really ever open it. I'm like, well, you're getting a pretty good grade in this class. Like, how are you doing that? So I don't, raise your hand here if you use textbooks and if like textbooks were an important part of your learning. Yeah, me too. And so like definitely something is changing. And so we started thinking about like, what is it that's changing and how do we help bring a lot of the goodness of textbooks into the tools that kids are choosing to use? And so this is what sort of set our approach to learning science into this project. And so I want to take you a little bit on a tour of how we got there. So building Learnabout was not a straightforward process. It was not like we drew a spec and had a vision and built it. We tried a lot of things. But one of the questions we started with is, okay, question for you curious people. What if the AI asked you questions? What could that do? And we started with this idea of like, you know, it could be more of a dialogue. It could be more of a back and forth. We could do things like deepen metacognition and spark curiosity with these products. And we started trying a lot of things. What if you could ask a question about any diagram that you saw and the AI could show you around? What if it wasn't just 2D diagrams, but also 3D diagrams, where you could navigate around, look at labels, but then maybe in response to a question, the AI would show you something, like where the femur is. And what if a big question got broken down into parts so that you would have guidance about how to understand it and how to navigate a space? What could that do to help you get the big picture, not just an answer to a question? And what if every answer was followed up by more questions you could ask to keep going and to continue your learning? Sometimes we played around with wild ideas like concept maps, starting out with an idea and showing you all of the things that were related, and playing with bringing images and text together to always complement each other. Eventually, we started developing a design system of components that could flexibly adapt to any content, any learning level, and any learner. Things like an interactive list, where you could click on any object to go deeper on that idea, or a timeline that would break down historical events into moments that you might explore. And these interactive diagrams I mentioned earlier made it in as something where you could click on any label to learn more about it. And sometimes the model does ask you questions, testing your knowledge, asking you to stop and think. And even in the process of making it, it was suggesting things to us. So back to that creativity idea, this was a card suggested by the AI as we're developing the product, saying like, oh, maybe we should tell the student why it matters. And we thought that's a great idea, so we designed that in. And as I said, every question is followed by more questions, because we don't ever want a student or a learner of any sort to stop with the answer. Now, the process of getting from that early idea to the finished product was pretty messy, maybe a little bit more like finger painting than like your traditional engineering linear process. But I think it's a sort of play that leads to wonder and curiosity and deeper learning. And it's something you can do with AI, like we did, as you're building a new product, or as a user, just using AI to navigate a space. And I'm pretty proud of what we ended up with. We've won a bunch of design awards recently. Actually, we're nominated for a Webby, so if you want to vote for us for a Webby, that would be exciting. But this shows a little bit about how the pieces came together. So here, a user asking about the history of bagels in New York. They get the big picture on the left. And then on the right, they get an answer with a timeline, and they dive in to when bagels arrived in New York and get to see some historical pictures, along with a little vocab card about the Lower East Side and some suggestions of where to go next. And so this gives a glimpse of the kind of experience you can have with the product. So what if we did have a tutor for every learner and a TA for every teacher? And what if every one of you could turn one of your curious questions into your next passion? What could that do for learning? Could that shift us from this burden of having to learn into this more exciting desire to learn? So we're really excited about the potential for AI as a new creative medium that can really unlock curiosity and spark deeper understanding. And we're looking forward to moving into a future with you together around this vision. Thank you.